morning, everybody. Today is Wednesday, October 15th, 2014, and this is Before the First Cup with Jules here on UCY.tv. How is everybody doing on this rainy Wednesday morning? I don't know if it's rainy by you, but it's rainy and gray here. About 60 degrees, so it's not too bad. But it was definitely difficult getting up this morning. Want to apologize for yesterday. I don't know, man. I had some major allergic reaction to cashews. I think I mentioned that, which was a new one for me. I hadn't had a reaction to cashews yet. And I swelled up and got itchy, and my throat was all like swollen. I'm still kind of recovering. I did another probably 18 hours of sleep yesterday, and at least my face doesn't feel puffy anymore. Still kind of out of it, but I think we could do a show today. I'm good. I was just all spacey yesterday. It was very hard to think and participate in the conversation. But today I have some special stuff we're going to look at, and this kind of came to me at about 6:30 this morning, and as I was rolling over, and I'm like, what am I going to do the show on today? And I don't plan the shows. They usually plan themselves through any of whatever the most current train of posts are. I'll start to find patterns, and look at that, and look at that, and look at that. They all connect. Well, there's been some stuff we haven't looked at yet in depth anyway. And something I haven't done in quite a long time is really kind of look at health, GMO. I mean, because of my attack of the cashews, I'm 46 years old. Attack of the cashews at 46 out of the blue, doesn't that seem kind of oddball? And the week before, I'd also been having issues earlier where every time I would take a long distance trip and I get my nice big cup of coffee and go hit the road, by the time I got to the other end, I would have hives again. I was like, what is going on? Ends up, I was getting hazelnut shots in my coffee. It's the hazelnut. So within 2 weeks, I discover, just out of the blue, I have now issues with hazelnuts and cashews. Now, 20 plus some odd years ago, same sorts of things happened to me. And I don't know, tomatoes, like just one day I couldn't eat tomatoes anymore because I would get covered in hives head to toe. Then there was another time where I'd go to eat meat. And every time I'd eat meat, I'd get sick to my stomach. And it's like, wow, why am I getting sick to my stomach? And I discovered that I couldn't digest meat. Just for some unknown reason, out of the blue, all of a sudden, all of my digestive enzymes for meat and meat byproducts no longer existed. Odd, huh? We were talking about allergies and stuff yesterday, and how an allergist of the old days has now become an immunologist of the new days. And even though way back then I used to argue with my allergist about how the immune system with allergies, with autoimmune, with outside threats are all the same mechanism. They insisted that they weren't. Well, guess what they are? So good thing I spent many years trying to understand allergies and autoimmune diseases after having doctors that couldn't diagnose anything wrong with me, yet I was very ill. And that's what they ended up being after you point them in the right direction. Then they go, oh, right, you're right. Hey, look, you're right. Good thing I understand all that stuff. But it's even more important now. And the causes of what I had back then are more important now because I think it is affecting a large majority of our population now. My mother, ever since I was a little kid, she's got light-colored hair, really light-colored skin. She was very, very, very sensitive to everything like skin creams and medications and whatever. She always had allergic reactions to something. And I mean, I never had issues until I got into my 20s. But what it allowed me to be, I think, was a canary in the coal mine. I am pretty positive right around the beginning to the mid 90s when I started having all of my issues. That was right around the time, and I've mentioned this before, that Scientific American front cover starts talking about nanotechnology. Right about the time when they started messing around, putting funky stuff in our food. I just saw something with Michael Taylor the other day, and I think it was right around 93. Hold on. Let me find that. I found a great infographic. I sent it to one of my friends who I'm just so proud of her. Over the last couple of weeks, she really has been like digging into a lot of this stuff and sending me links to videos and things going, oh my God, did you know about this? So I'm just so proud of her because she really is like opening her eyes going, holy crap, Jill, you've been right. Yeah, here we go. This is Michael Taylor's Monsanto Juggling Act. In 1976, he was a staff lawyer with the FDA. In 1981, he became a lawyer in firm working for Monsanto. Yeah, he worked for another law firm, but then Monsanto contracted them. He argued in 1988. So here we go. My last years of high school. Actually, no, I was out of high school. My first years in college. It's early still, guys. I've only had one sip of coffee. Argued in 1988 that trace amounts of hazards in foods should be allowed on the market. So go Michael Taylor. 1991. This is when it happened, people. I know it is because this is when the nanotech showed up on Scientific American's site. And by 93, I was sicker than a dog. 1991, Deputy Commissioner for Policy at the FDA, when the official policy became, quote, GMOs are considered safe with no need for labeling. They started putting them in our food back then. Many of us started to get all these weird problems with digestion. You know, back in those days, people didn't talk about health problems either. So it wasn't like something that you went out and shared with your friends. But I know my best friend, Heidi, she and I were both very sick. Nobody knew what was wrong with us. Oh, then what did they diagnose it with? It was right around the time of the first Gulf War, and they started coming out with this, I never can remember what it's called. But it was when everybody was just so tired and exhausted. They called it, somebody in chat, come on. By the way, good morning, chat room. For the non-existent UCY Cupid owl, what was that disease called that makes everyone so exhausted and tired back in the early 90s? And they blamed it like the Gulf War syndrome, I think is one of the things they called it. But before that, they had another name for it. Anyway, you know what I'm talking about. It was right around that time that there was this epidemic of this disorder that was unexplained as to why people got it. A lot of times they said it was in your head. You know, a lot of these diseases were in your head back then. Did you notice that too? Except that 1991, Deputy Commissioner of Policy to the FDA, Michael Taylor, made it official that GMOs are considered safe with no need for labeling. Oh, wait, let's continue. 1994, the administrator of the Food and Safety, USDA, when RBST was approved, I believe that's one of the growth hormones. We'll have to look that one up. So I didn't realize that he also was in the USDA and the FDA. Oh, my God. 1996, he became the vice president for public policy at Monsanto. And then in 2012, just as they're starting to roll this new shit in that we're going to talk about today, he became deputy commissioner of foods at the FDA. Everyone understand why our food is no good for us anymore and we're all sick from it? His name is Michael Taylor. Let's search RBST. I thought that was one of those bovine growth hormones. That was the whole big investigative case that they did at Fox News when one of the reporters really dug into it and had this whole report showing this growth hormone and all the bad stuff that it did to your kids, and they wouldn't let her air it because they were somehow an advertiser, and she ended up quitting. Yes, absolutely correct. That is what it is. Recombatant bovine somatropin works the same way as and is a synthetic version of the protein bovine somatropin, resulting in the production of just over 1 gallon more milk per cow per day. So what is BST? Bovine somatropin, also referred to as BST or BGH or bovine growth hormone. So there you go, people. That is exactly what it is. I've seen it called RBGH. They're calling it RBST. Is a naturally occurring protein hormone found in all dairy cattle. It is produced by the pituitary gland, and the primary function of somatropin is the coordination of nutrient use in the body to assure nutrients are used where they are most needed. In healthy lactating cows, it directs nutrients to the udder for milk production, and in the young growing animal, it takes nutrients available for growth. Somatropin serves the same function in all mammals, including humans. Each mammalian species makes their own version of it. So, what year was that? 1994, they started feeding cows the synthetic version of it. Now, when my daughter was born, I breastfed. And at a certain point, they really push you because of, if you can even believe it, fluoride. They told me your kid needs fluoride to strengthen her teeth, so she's got to start drinking water or formula mixed with tap water. That is what my pediatrician told me. And she needs to get some calcium, so you got to start filling her full of factory farmed milk. I'm not a milk drinker, and I'm not a tap water drinker either, so I kind of did my own thing. But I don't know if you're aware of it. You can get BGH-free milk. Now, I don't drink milk at all, and I'll tell you some of the things that I've discovered in my travels with Fukushima and getting my hands on all of the EPA monitoring from 1999 to 2011, which I have in a sortable spreadsheet, direct from the EPA's back end, that we have had things such as plutonium in the milk since at least 1999. So, chronic fatigue syndrome. Thank you, Mr. Chuckocelli. Yes, that's what it was called. And they kept saying that it was in everybody's head, chronic fatigue syndrome. And that was the whole early to mid 90s. That was like the blanket diagnosis for anyone that had that disorder, where you had no energy, you couldn't get up. You just were, it's like your body was not processing anything properly anymore. But how convenient. And I just dropped that graphic that I was reading. It was pretty funny, but it's all true for Michael Taylor. Look at how our food system got messed up. It's all Michael Taylor. He was the one that was the catalyst to make certain that our food supply was messed up. So anyway, back to the milk. The milk wasn't a good thing. I would highly recommend that if you're going to drink milk, to at least try to get farm fresh, grass-fed cows without bovine growth hormone. I mean, there are now young girls going into puberty at 9 drinking that crap, and put that on top of pouring it into a plastic bottle full of BPA. And there's a recipe for disaster for your kid at 30 years old as they go into menopause and have cancerous tumors and pituitary gland problems. I don't know. To me, when I look at all this stuff, and here's the thing that's just so bothersome about all of this is right now, all of us are hurting. All of us. Have you seen how much it costs to go to the grocery store? And the prices are just going up and up and up. And I don't know how this is ever going to be sustainable. And we haven't even reached winter yet. So things aren't even being imported yet. When I was gone this weekend, and as I was driving back, there are some farms on my way back. So, first of all, my friend has chickens. So I left with a dozen grass fed chicken eggs, all nice and brown. It was pretty awesome. We have to cook some. They're in the fridge right now. But I was just so excited. She left them in my mailbox for me on her way to work. So I was pretty happy about that. But on my way back, there's a couple big farms. And one of our things was to go get some white pumpkins. I had seen white pumpkins on the stand when we went by on our way in. So I said, we're going to get some white pumpkins. We get there. Wow, they had like all these hybrid pumpkins that they must have mixed with gourd pollen. So there were some that looked like mutants, some that were like oddball-y colors. So we got a bright red pumpkin, which is awesome. Big, too. It was like 10 pounds. And I mean, everything was so amazingly cheap, too. It was 10 pounds and flat almost. And then we got a pure white pumpkin and then a bright yellow pumpkin. So that was great. But then we go wandering around inside. And right now it's apple harvest season in New York State. If you have never had New York State apples, trust me, you definitely want to try New York State apples this time of year because they are some of the most delicious things you've ever had. So they had bins, and you literally could buy like a bushel of apples, and there's probably got to be, I don't know, don't quote me on this, but just with my eyeball guess, I would have to say 75 to 100 apples in a big bushel for $12. Now, you know, you can't really eat that many. But just saying, you know, the prices are great and farm fresh food. And you know it's not GMO. And I'm going to tell you, in my travels past through there are lots of cornfields. And one of the things I've been noticing right out on the street in front of those cornfields are little signs. And you know what, guys? If it wasn't such a windy back road, one lane each direction at 55, I would have out a piece of paper and a pen writing down each of the names on those little placards. And maybe I will. If I go through next time and it's kind of quiet, I'll check it out. But it's not Monsanto. It's not any, I'm trying to think of, I have Tech Mirror on the brain right now, but there's a couple companies, Syngenta, that work on genetically modified food. It's other names that I've never seen before. So, I mean, obviously there are the companies. These are just the biggest companies that we deal with. But I was just very surprised that out in the backwoods here, and these aren't any small potato farms either. We're talking hundreds and hundreds of acres in the valleys of all kinds of food grown. We got Angus cows. There's all kinds of stuff going on there. And there's obviously GMO corn growing everywhere. But anyway, back to this place we stopped. So we got these great pumpkins. We go inside. There's just mountains of apples, these huge vats that they just dump these apples into. I mean, they were piled so high, and about 10 different kinds. Super, super cheap. But what did I find? I found the largest broccoli and the largest stick of Brussels sprouts I have ever seen in my life. This broccoli had to weigh a good 5 pounds. No lie. I mean, I had to take 2 hands to carry this thing. $2.50. And the Brussels sprouts were a stick about 3 feet long, which I tried to grow both broccoli and Brussels sprouts this year, and they failed miserably. So that's why I was excited, because we finally got our farm fresh Brussels sprouts and broccoli. But that must have been at least 3 feet long. I take them to the register. They're $2.50. Hey, how is that possible? So, you know, you go to your local grocery store and you're paying a $1.49 for a broccoli crown, you know, which is like one hack off of this thing. And I probably have about 50 broccoli crowns on this sucker for $2.50. So this made me think, I mean, stuff like this, we have two things going on. We have either A, you got GMO versions of good food out there that's made available now for us to eat, or the prices are just so out there, or for such little amounts of food that most of us can't afford it most of the time. I mean, they are encouraging us beyond a doubt to eat unhealthy. So, of course, now that I'm talking about this, nothing is going to go where it's supposed to go. I might have to do a Skype thwart. I'm going to tell these guys to go screw off. You're not going to prevent me. Hold on. I'm going to use Skype and just drop my links from one computer to the next. Even if I can't play videos, I can open the story on another machine. Maybe. Oh, looky. It's not even transferring my link to the other computer. How is that possible? All right, well, let's do this then. We will add me to the call and see if I can see it that way. I mean, I guess I could just sit here and ramble. But I wanted to read some study that had come out about cruciferous vegetables, of which broccoli and Brussels sprouts and cabbage are cruciferous. I love cruciferous vegetables. And that is like old school European. And they definitely knew something that we didn't know. Here we go. All right, I can ditch this now. Boop. All right. Chemicals present in broccoli and other vegetables may improve autism symptoms. Now, I just read an interesting story about autism, by the way. And they really think that beyond these vaccines, which they've been blaming autism on for a long time, they really think it's the crap in our food. And I wouldn't doubt it. I mean, I'm going to tell you, having been a healthy kid that then ended up in my 20s as these toxins built up in my body, being sensitive to so many things. I mean, I literally couldn't eat anything. Or, I mean, even detergents, laundry detergents would send me in hives. It was awful. My 20s were awful. And I had never had allergies ever before in my life. And now we are at epidemic proportions of all of these freaky syndromes that didn't exist or maybe existed rarely in very small numbers of the populations 20, 30 plus years before. And I've been able to point them all back to the early 90s when Michael Taylor got involved of blanket approving this crap to be put in our food without our knowledge and without any type of labeling. And by the way, beware, and we're going to talk about this because I was really shocked, beware of products that are being labeled non-GMO that actually aren't. Honestly, I really hope they have a class action lawsuit against this company, because I'll tell you what, the only reason I fed my kid these as a treat sometimes is because they were all organic and non-GMO corn. Guess what? Consumer Reports, I don't know if you guys saw that. Consumer Reports tested a whole bunch of samples. They are 96% GMO corn. We'll get into that. All right, let me get back to the cruciferous vegetables. Sulforaphane treatment produces significant improvements in small study. Results must be repeated, it says. A small study led by investigators at Mass General Hospital for Children and Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine has found evidence that daily treatment with sulforaphane, a molecule found in such foods such as broccoli, cauliflower, and cabbage, may improve some symptoms of autism spectrum disorder. Now, remember, I'm not sure about Mass General, but I know 100% for a fact that Johns Hopkins University is the university that has the huge database of children's brain scans, and they are a big part of the Global Brain Project. So they've been watching the brain and doing treatments and getting brain scans of all that stuff for a long time. So it's interesting. I mean, I'm glad that maybe they have found something that seems to help. On the other hand, just remember that when they go in and they find natural remedies for things out of our food, what's the next thing that happens? Oh, they become genetically modified, or those substances come out and become synthesized so they can be patented and then sold to you as an RX for profit. And we should also talk about health insurance next, because talk about a shocker. All right. I think all of us are going to end up without health insurance. They're going to jack the prices up to the point where there is no getting health insurance unless you go on Barry Care. And I'm seeing that right now, and I don't like it. Okay. In their report being published online in PNAS Early Edition, the investigators describe how participants receiving a daily dose of sulforafane showed improvement in both behavioral and communication assessments in as little as 4 weeks. Now, like I was saying, anyone who is of Polish or German heritage grew up eating a lot of cabbages. I love cabbage. Cabbage is one of those old school foods, too, that you go back to the early settlers and they could put it down in a root cellar and it would last you all winter long. Cabbage is loaded with vitamin C and all kinds of other vitamins and minerals, and it's great for you. Plus, it's one of those vegetables that you can ferment, and fermentation is great for you as well. Anybody who loves sauerkraut, which I do also. The authors stress that the results of this pilot study conducted at the MGHFC-affiliated Lurie Center for Autism, so that's Massachusetts General Hospital for Children, must be confirmed in larger investigations before any conclusions can be drawn about sulforafane's therapeutic benefit. But you know what? Even though they need to do larger studies, I'm going to tell you that if autism is caused by external things that we put into our body, these chemicals, these GMO, these RNAi, whatever crap we're putting into ourselves and into our children, these virus-like synthetic particles, which, by the way, I was reading more about those. Those also interact with your DNA. I would say that natural remedies and beyond cruciferous vegetables, I would say give turmeric a shot. Turmeric is shown actually to even be helpful for Alzheimer's now and help neurons regrow in the brain. You know, put turmeric in your sweet and sour cabbage. That would probably be delicious. My friend actually made, this is my friend that's been waking up. She actually made what I called gumpki. You guys probably call pigs in a blanket or stuffed cabbage rolls. She put turmeric in there, in the meat, and she said it was amazing. So that's a double whammy. You get your cabbage and your turmeric. I'm telling you guys, you make chicken soup and put a bunch of stuff like that in it. Put some cabbage, put some turmeric, some cumin, some big peppercorns in there. That is like super healing. And I always put broccoli and cauliflower in my soups. I cut up Brussels sprouts like little cabbages, so there are all kinds of good greens floating on top. Tons of carrots and stuff. Guys, that is like super healing elixir. Stay away from the BGH milk and eat natural food. Don't eat your shit out of cans. Which, of course, we all know that. But I'm telling you, I do experiments on myself and my family. I've been doing experiments on myself for years. And this stuff is not crap. These stories are not lies. And for as much, and I'm going to read you an article. I got to get back on this because I'm going to leave them a nasty message. IO9 put out this article the other day that made me almost vomit my coffee about anti-vaxxers and Ebola conspiracy theories. I could not believe it. I want to send them something that says, shame on you, IO9. It's just unbelievable. And these people, and I saw that like 3 or 4 of my lefty friends subscribed to that page, so I'm sure I'm going to get ripped apart if I put a comment there about Julie, you're crazy. But I'm going to tell you what, my lefty friends are so damn brainwashed and believe this crap about how healthy this shit is for you and how great it is to be injecting yourself with all this untested crap that's being put out there for profit. Oh, yeah, it's going to feed the world. Because everybody's dying of man-made viruses and man-made droughts and man-made, weather issues. I don't know. Anyway, let's not get off topic. So let me finish reading this story. Quote, over the years, there have been several anecdotal reports that children with autism can have improvements in social interaction and sometimes language skills when they have a fever, explains Andrew Zimmerman, MD, a corresponding author of the current report, who also published a 2007 paper documenting the fever effect. We investigated what might be behind that on a cellular level and postulated that it results from fever's activation of the cellular stress response, in which protective cellular mechanisms that are usually held in reserve are turned on throughout the activation of gene transcription. Affiliated with the MGHFC, which is your Mass General Hospital for Children Department of Neurology, Zimmerman is now based at UMass Memorial Medical Center. Sulforane, which is a substance that they found in cruciferous vegetables, was first isolated in the 1990s by Paul Talalay, MD, a co-corresponding author of an early edition paper and now professor of pharmacology and molecular sciences at Johns Hopkins. And his group also found that chemical supports of key aspects of the cell response. Zimmerman, who was based at Hopkins when he published the fever paper, approached members of Talalay's team to propose investigating sulforane's possible benefits for treating autism, while the mechanism underlying autism and other disorders on the autism spectrum remain largely unknown. Isn't that interesting? Like how we know so much about everything, and we are messing around with these genetic elixirs to turn genes on and off in our body that we don't quite understand, but we're already starting human trials. Yet we don't even know what causes things such as autism. How is that possible? Or are we just pretending we don't know what causes autism with the ability to be able to genetically synthesize? I mean, you could take a swab of my cheek and run it through a genome machine and take a look at everything I got going on. How is it possible? I call bullshit on all these doctors most of the time, I'm telling you. And even before, go back to the 90s. For anyone who had major health issues in the 90s like I did, who went to every single doctor known for this, that, and the other thing, and nobody helped me. Nobody. Oh, yeah, their stock response was, oh, you have cancer. I must have been diagnosed with cancer 5 times. And it wasn't cancer. I was like, you know what? I don't have cancer. This just came out of the blue. And all they ever wanted to do was cut stuff out. Go in. You know what? My thyroid problem, which ended up being autoimmune. Who the hell knows where that came from? I talked about this yesterday, about my body trying to kill my thyroid gland. So in response, my thyroid was going crazy, overproducing hormone. And the endocrinologist's first response was, well, let's cut it out. I was like, but then you're going to have to give me replacement hormone for the rest of my life. He's like, yep, that's what we've been doing for 50 years. So, you know, if that's good for everyone else, it's good enough for you. I said, what? I have all these allergies to things. What if I'm allergic to the synthetic hormone? He says, then I guess you die. That's what he said. I said, you know what? I think I'm going to go see another doctor. That's all they ever wanted to do, is cut stuff out. Or give you drugs. Cut it out first, so then you have to be dependent on the drugs. I bet he got a kickback to that shit, too. Anyway, all right, let's get back to this. So these doctors never, ever had an answer. They didn't even have a good guess. And what it resulted in is me having to do the research pre-internet, mind you, and just start experimenting on myself with different substances to see whether or not I got better. We're going to talk about that meat thing, too, because this is the first time I've ever seen a story about that same meat problem that I had for all those years. And the only way I got around the meat was that I found a protein powder, which I thought it was the protein powder, but I started taking protein powder because I couldn't eat meat, obviously. But what I found is when I started taking this protein powder, if I took it first, I could then eat a steak or a burger, and it wouldn't sit and rot in my stomach for 3 weeks and make me feel like I was dying. And it ended up that in that protein powder, there also were digestive enzymes. That's how I discovered that my body had stopped producing digestive enzymes for proteins in particular. Anyway, I'm like all over the board, but that's all right. You guys get it. Do I read anymore? This is really in depth about cruciferous vegetables. Let it be known that sulforaphane may help improve autism symptoms. And you know, one of the things I was noticing in looking at autism spectrum disorder and all the different types of disorders that are broken out under that, because there's lots of them. And there are different levels of autism. You could just be mildly autistic, or you could be very autistic. I think a lot of us actually have autism spectrum disorder, and we don't quite know it. And I think some of this adult ADD that I had blamed for many years, and maybe partially it's true, I blamed it for many years on technology, on how we are just so overburdened now by communication from every direction. I got to tell you guys, sometimes I got to go hide because I just can't deal with it anymore, with the endless messages and the endless news and the endless, it's just always coming at you and you can't get away from it. I need to run away and hide and get some quiet. My brain needs quiet. And if I don't have quiet, I start to spaz out because my brain like short circuits if it's not quiet. And that right there is something that autistic children, they don't like loud noises. And not that it's loud noises, but it's noise in my head. I never had that before. That probably started in college again, when I'd sit down to write a paper, and I used to think that it was me just procrastinating. But my whole house had to be clean. Everything had to be in order and lined up and in its exact place. Guys, that's a definition of OCD. Well, look at autistic spectrum disorder. OCD could be a part of it too. And it was right around the time that I started getting all those digestive problems and sensitivities. Right around the time when Michael Taylor went in and said, hey, GMOs are great and you can put them in the food. I think this stuff has been affecting all of us. Some of us to more of an extent than others. But I think that we have slowly, and we've talked about this before, slowly are being genetically modified just like the food. And that, actually, hold on, we're going to find this because the end result is the new form of human in 2030. Which, by the way, people, it's 2014 right now. That is not too many years away. Add another generation or two. So there is no more farm fresh food. So you can't afford farm fresh food. Here's a disturbing thing. We know about soybeans. Soybeans are just about all genetically modified. Corn is just about, I think I read 90 or 96% all genetically modified in this country. Here, by the way, I'm going to drop this for anyone who's interested. This article about the cruciferous vegetables and autism. And we knew about particular foods that were genetically modified, but they are getting into everything now. I am afraid that very soon there isn't going to be anything, at least for the uneducated, absolutely, there's not going to be anything that they will be able to eat that does not have some sort of slice and dice in it. Here, I want to get back to this. We talked about the beef and my issues of digesting beef. Now, let me tell you something. I no longer, over the last 4 or 5 years, as I have worked my way through understanding genetically modified food and the poisons that they're putting in our environment, and as I've tried to get myself away from most of that stuff, I no longer have any of these issues, by the way. I still have allergies sometimes. It wasn't peanut, cashew and hazelnut, those are brand new. I would say canary in a coal mine, caution. watch out for cashews and for hazelnuts. If all of a sudden I start having reactions to them and I've eaten them for 40 years, that means that they've done something to them. This is kind of how it's worked out all my life. I've been this canary. So I don't know. Keep your eyes open. I bet we're going to see that there's like this huge rise in allergies to all nuts in general. You watch. Anyway, but getting back to this meat thing. So this meat issue that I had for years, right? It went on for probably 10 years or so until I discovered that protein powder that I then discovered was loaded with digestive enzymes for digesting proteins. Well, listen to this story. This is from 2012, June 21st. Mysterious mammal meat allergy. Mammal meat allergy. Mysterious mammal meat allergy. First time I have ever seen a story about people being allergic to meat. Now, I thought that was just one freaky thing that I lived through, and everyone always kind of raised an eyebrow. They're like, all right, Joel, whatever. I mean, it would literally rot in my stomach. I could not digest it. Mysterious mammal meat allergy is caused by ticks and spreading fast. Now, what do we know about the history of ticks? Oh, what? They did some crazy stuff with ticks at Plum Island? Oh, yes, they did. They created all kinds of diseases and put them in things like ticks and mosquitoes and then let them loose? Oh, yes, they did. What Plum Island was on the East Coast? Off the coast of New York? Oh, yes, it was. Now it's being built right smack dab in the middle of Kansas. So check this out. East Coast states, oh, go figure. Virginia, North Carolina, and New York are among the worst hit. I also thought, like, how nefarious this would be to put some sort of disease into a tick that would go out and bite mammal meat, like cows, chickens, deer, to then create an allergy so no humans could eat the meat. Think about it. In a shit hit the fan scenario, it's not going to help us much, even though there's not enough deer for everyone to have more than 2 in the country. Think about it. Oh, all of a sudden, all the meat gets some tick-borne disease. We're going to have test tube meat because it's safer now. I don't know, things like that go through my head, but how crazy is some mystery mammal meat allergy that they are now saying is spread by ticks and spreading fast? Americans can be a stubborn lot, and if there is one thing many of them won't give up, it's red meat. So apparently not chickens, red meat, which beef is what I had issues with. As epitomized by the Beef Checkoff program's popular ad phrase, beef, it's what's for dinner. Deadly mammal meat allergy fascinates allergists. Oh, I'm sure it does. And remember, allergists who used to be allergists are now immunologists. But some meat lovers are being forced to begrudgingly give up their favorite food item to preserve their health. The culprit is a new allergy to galactose alpha-1 3-galactose or alpha-gal, a sugar found in the flesh of virtually all non-primate mammals. The allergy is pretty unique. Allergist Dr. Aaron McGinty describes, quote, intellectually, listen to this, intellectually, it is such a cool allergy on so many levels. It's a sugar, not a protein, and most food allergies occur in response to a protein antigen. Oh, so it's like some weird allergy we've never, ever seen before. And to add to the oddity, the allergy is the first known case of delayed anaphylaxis. Now, anaphylaxis is what I experienced a couple days ago which is why I was so out of it during yesterday's show, because it literally causes massive swelling in your throat. I mean, my face, my eyes, my brain felt slow, my tongue, my inside of my mouth was all still swollen. Anaphylaxis is a serious allergic reaction to food that can cause death. Symptoms include appearance of an itchy rash. Yes, I had it head to toe. Throat swelling. Yes, I had that. And low blood pressure. I did not take my blood pressure, but I could tell you I slept like 16 hours. Symptoms include the appearance of an itchy rash, throat swelling, low blood pressure. These symptoms occur minutes after eating the allergy-containing food. But in the case of the alpha-gal allergy, people can eat a steak dinner and then be stricken with anaphylaxis hours later, requiring hospitalization and life-saving ephedrine injections. Now, is that not absolutely batshit nuts? Helen Olive, a North Carolina resident interviewed by CNN, was suffering from the allergy for 11 years now. Let me just think. 2012, 2002, so 2000. Oh, I wish I remembered when that beef allergy started. It was probably later on because I was doing protein powders back then, which is when I was working out, which probably would have been late 90s when I was going to the gym, trying to fix myself. At first, it caused a mere discomfort, she recalls. It was terrible. The sensation was all over my body, and then I developed hives. But by the time the attacks became more severe, she eventually ended up being hospitalized, which led to her diagnosis. She recalls, I had black and blue salad with beef tips, and later I had the same reaction, and Benadryl would not work. Guys, I lived on Benadryl for quite a number of years. It was the only thing that allowed me to be like partially human, except that it knocked you for a loop, tired, until you got used to it. And how good is that? Like, you've taken enough Benadryl that it doesn't even make you tired anymore, you know? Jonathan is asking if this is a rebroadcast. No, it is not a rebroadcast. Would you like to come on the call? I'll pull you in a second. I'm thinking that's a message from now. I didn't get any calls, so I don't know. But let me finish the story. But with time, the attacks became more severe, and eventually she was hospitalized, leading to her diagnosis. Yes, Benadryl would not work. There are now over 1,500 known cases of alpha-gal allergies in the United States, and they are virtually all found among residents on the East Coast, with the largest population of victims living in Virginia. North Carolina and New York are also seeing rising numbers of cases. Now, guys, that's where the tick population is exploding, by the way, is in the woods up and down the East Coast. Ticks are believed to be to blame. The cause has seemingly been traced to the common Lone Star tick, as all the victims have had at least one recent tick bite. Many have developed the allergy after many bites. Precise details of how the tick bite leads to the allergy are not yet known, but they are a hot topic of research. Now, I don't ever remember being bitten by a tick, but that doesn't mean that I haven't been. I mean, I've been in New York State for 44 years, and I've spent a lot of my time out in the woods. It's very possible that I might have gotten nailed by a tick way back when and didn't know it. You know, eventually they fall off. Among the highest profile victims is author John Grisham, who owns a plantation near Charlottesville, Virginia. He had to give up red meat after he received a tick bite on the plantation and began to experience painful reactions to mammal meat. A handful of victims have recovered, seeing their alpha-gal tolerance return over time. I'm telling you, in my experiments, it ended up being the digestive enzyme that for some unknown reason just stopped being produced in my body. It's producing now. I don't have to do the protein powders with digestive enzyme anymore. I do my probiotics, but I don't do those digestive enzymes that were specific to proteins, though this said it was a sugar, but who knows? You know what? I'm not a nutritionist or a doctor. All I know is that what I did worked, and if I hadn't done that, I couldn't eat red meat. Dr. Scott Comans, who discovered the allergy in 2009, along with his colleague, Dr. Thomas Plant Mills, warns that there is no treatment for victims other than to give up red meat. He comments that there is no current medication to treat food allergies. Now, that is true in one respect. And food allergies that just come out of the blue for no reason. Oh, how unusual, like my cashews all of a sudden. On the other hand, I will tell you what will treat it. Get off all the GMO crap and the stuff that's got pesticides on it. And we're going to look at that. We are going to look at how all that RNAi technology is now tying in with the GMO 2.0 that Monsanto's working on. But if you get yourself off of all that genetically modified frankenfood, I will guarantee you'll be able to eat some of those foods again. Whether or not that was genetically modified food itself, or if the chemicals in your body are causing the reaction. Researchers suggest that East Coast residents use, yes, and I won't do this, DEET-based tick repellent. And you coat yourself good head to toe is what they tell you, with lots and lots of insecticide when working outdoors, and avoid areas that might have ticks. But for people who live next to the woods, exposure may be inevitable, and thus the number of people with mammal meat allergies is expected to rise. So how great is that? I'm going to drop this into chat. Mammal meat. If anyone who is listening on the flip side, if I can find that one, that is an article on a publication called dailytech.com. It was sourced from ABC News and CNN. I mean, I can tell you that most certainly I've had something very similar to this. Who knows if it was the ticks, but it definitely was some sort of allergy to meat. And this is the first time I've ever really seen a story about it. Here, let me see if I can add Jonathan. I am assuming that that message was from now because it had a timestamp, but I do not see that he called, so that was weird. And Jonathan, being a fellow New Yorker, might want to weigh in on this, and a food aficionado. There he is.
Hello.
Hello.
Let me turn off. How's it going? I just called in, but for some reason it just rang and rang.
Yeah, I didn't see that there even was a call, so I don't know why, but that's cool.
Well, how you doing? This is Jonathan James Kramer from The Continual Condition, as you know. And I just wanted to say hi. I'm listening to what you were talking about Lyme disease a bit earlier.
Uh-huh.
And I remember hearing this. There was an episode on Coast to Coast AM a couple of years ago, and it just had me. It was riveting. It was this doctor, and I wish I could remember his name, who had this really frightening story. He had contracted Lyme disease, a few years, and he was a doctor, and it got so bad that he could no longer practice because he had such intense neurological problems. He had just intense brain fog. I mean, just imagine a hangover, times 1,000, and he had to, quit his practice, and he was, I guess, walking on the street one day, and he became very sensitive to light and sun and heat, and of course, and almost like malaria, where you can have these, comes back. And so he passed out, and they admitted him to the ER. And the doctor who had just come back from a conference on Lyme disease, and they were discussing different options. So basically what it came down to is he said, and he did a lot of research, that you just need to nuke it with antibiotics for years. Like even he just says 3 months is not enough. You have to just keep nuking it. And he discussed the, I guess, blood-brain barrier. I don't remember.
No, they do, and they have to do massive. My daughter was bitten by a tick that left a bullseye on her when she was 2, and that's absolutely what they did. They nuked her with antibiotics, which I was horrified over. But I'll tell you what, if you dig into Lyme disease, it is the strangest thing ever. They are these little, what they call spigots, and if you look at them, they're little corkscrews, and if you don't hit them right away, they will get into your joints, and they can hide for many, many years and cause all kinds of debilitating neurological issues.
Oh yeah, there's a documentary. I can't remember the name. I couldn't even get through the first scene. It's on Lyme disease, and the first scene is this man is trying to take his wife out for a walk, and she's afflicted, and she can't even like stand up.
No, my
And
mother.
oh,
Years ago, back when this is how I found out about the mosquitoes, doing a search on dumping radiation over populations back in like 2011, I came upon a FOIA document that had talked about some of the experiments at Plum Island and putting Lyme disease not only into ticks but into mosquitoes, and then releasing the mosquitoes over Thousand Islands in New York. And that was in the early to mid 80s. We used to go camping there, and I will tell you this, the one thing I remember about Thousand Islands is bazillions of mosquitoes at sundown. They were so bad, you couldn't even go out to the bathroom, okay? Like us running and screaming. And my mother had gotten bitten by something while we were in the Thousand Islands, and that was shortly thereafter. I mean, she went probably a good 5 years of being completely incapacitated. And I mean literally like on the couch, couldn't move, couldn't walk, arthritis in every joint. She was very, very, very sick for a long time. And that's what I blame it on.
Well, that's the thing. This doctor, I'll have to dig up his name, but one of the things that he said that was so frightening was doctors have been misdiagnosing it as multiple sclerosis. Mm-hmm. And they actually went back. He was able to get permission or whatever to go back and examine all these cases where these people were diagnosed and then they died shortly after, and they all tested positive for Lyme disease. No. So he believes that thousands of people have been misdiagnosed with MS, and so they didn't treat it. I mean, Lyme disease is, I think from what I remember, it's manageable and even curable, but you have to just nuke it. The mistake they were making was they would just give him like a couple months, but he said it's like, even if you have to go on for like 5 years on antibiotics, you just have to just keep nuking it because it will respond, but it's just unlike anything else.
Well, the scary thing is that the tests aren't really accurate either. So you can test negative for it forever and still have it, by the way.
That's what he said. He said there were two, if I remember correctly. There's one that's very expensive, and most doctors will not let you do that test. Like, you really have to push for it. So there's one that's a lot more accurate than the other one. I can't remember. If I have more time, I'll look this up. But it was a really, really fascinating episode. I think this was in 2011. Because I remember I was listening to it on my lunch break at work, and I was like, oh, my God. I was like almost sweating. And then since then, my friend of mine had Lyme disease. Some people don't, have the same reaction. I had a friend who had Lyme disease, and he was sick for, a month or so. But I haven't heard him mention it since. And then a friend of my wife's, she had it a few years ago. And we go to Shelter Island, which is a small island off the Hamptons, off Long Island, New York, that they have a serious deer problem because they have no natural predators and insane deer tick problem. So that place is. So I'm thankful that no one's had gotten that we know in the family, but they spray their lawn with rosemary like once a week. We're constantly using rosemary shampoo because that apparently is a natural deterrent. Rosemary based products. So I have found a few ticks on me in the last couple of years after going there, but I haven't seen any, any spots or whatever. But it's absolutely frightening because it's everywhere.
Ticks are horrifying, and I guess this year, especially in New York State, they are at a high.
They were last year. There's the Mashomic Preserve, which is right down the street from my in-laws' house, and it's these beautiful trails, that go through sort of a salt marsh or whatever, swamp, and up around the island and by the ocean along these beaches. And I've wanted to go for the last 4 years since I've been with my wife, and every summer I go there. We go a lot. We go almost every weekend. They're like, no, ticks are too crazy. It's too dangerous. But people still hike those trails. But they said that last year that it was 3 times the tick population, or the tick warning scare, whatever, was 3 times the normal level. Ticks are just the most frightening, repulsive. I know insects are important in the whole circle of life or whatever, but man.
No, ticks are bad. I think out of most insects, ticks are probably the ones I fear the most, just because if you have ever taken a look at how small a tick can be. They can look like just a grain of a seed off of some plant that's seeding. I mean, like literally
Yeah.
just the tiniest little dot. You would never even see it. I mean, there are some ticks that can be much larger, of course, and then you'll see it as a bump under the skin, but some you'll never see.
Yeah, and is there any? I mean, I know that there are techniques to control, I guess mosquitoes and stuff like that, but ticks, I don't see. They don't,
Deep.
they don't behave like other insects. Like you can't just nuke them like you can, I guess, mosquitoes. You can find, where they're breeding, and they're kind of dispersed, aren't they, on the forest floor?
They're all over the forest. Anywhere there's trees or there's grassy areas around the edges of the woods, that's where you have to be the most careful.
But other than the rosemary technique, because they have, it's big business in Shelter Island. They come, and it's a natural, and they spray your lawn with that, and apparently that works. But still, the deer, that doesn't deter the deer. That's the problem. The deer still come on your property and eat your apples or whatever you have.
Right.
And maybe they leave some ticks, maybe, but chances are if you treat it. But I don't know how effective that rosemary treatment is.
I've never heard of the rosemary treatment. I mean, most of us don't treat for ticks here because there really isn't anything. I mean, DEET is the one thing that they tout as making you, at least less palatable to a tick. But do you really want to be spraying DEET all over yourself?
No, I always, yeah. No, I had some of that when I went to, I bought some before I went to Costa Rica back in, was it 2000, I think it was 2010 maybe? 2009, something like that. But
here, let's see what it's called. N-N-diethyl metatulamide. Yeah, that sounds great.
That sounds healthy.
Like I want to spray that all over me. Woo.
Yeah. No, no, that stuff's good. When was it? Was it back in the early 90s when Skin So Soft was found to have repellent properties?
Yeah, Skin So Soft. There was an Avon product, and everybody went crazy over that. And they used to coat the kids in it to protect them from mosquitoes and ticks. Yeah.
I remember, I was with my mom, and we were pulling out of the bank or something, and there was just like a handwritten sign that said, Skin So Soft, available here. I was like, what's the big deal? Like, my mom said, oh, it's like the new thing for repelling insects. But what happened to that? Did they take it off the market? Did it end up causing...
I don't know. You don't see it too much anymore. I see here effects on health for DEET. As a precaution, manufacturers advise that DEET products should not be used under clothing or on damaged skin, and that preparations be washed off after they are no longer needed or between applications. DEET can be an irritant and, in rare cases, may cause severe epidermal reactions. In the DEET registration eligibility decision, the United States Environmental Protection Agency, which is kind of a joke, reported 14 to 46 cases of potential DEET-associated seizures, including 4 deaths. The EPA states it does appear that some cases are likely related to DEET toxicity, but observed that with 30% of the U.S. population using DEET, the likely seizure rate is about 1 per 100 million users. So I guess it's all right.
Yeah, wow, 1 per 100 million. Well,
Hey, here though, wait. Cornell University states that Everglade National Park employees having extensive DEET exposure were more likely to have insomnia, mood disturbances, and impaired cognitive function than were lesser exposed coworkers.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. So let's spray it all over our kids.
Oh my gosh, yeah. What's funny was there's such a I lived in Montreal and Quebec City for many years, and because there's national health care, you're taxed so you don't really pay out of pocket. This new thing that's been very profitable is these, and I fell for it too, I admit it. These travel clinics. So it's you pay out of pocket. Your insurance does not cover it, but you go and you can get immunized for. I did the Twinrix, which is the hepatitis. The two, was it A and B? I don't know. And then they give you a prescription for this medication you take for malaria. You take one or two like the week before, 1 or 2 while you're there, and then the week after. It could be a whole scam, but someone was like, "Oh, you're going to Costa Rica, do this," and I did it, and it cost me like $300 or $400, and That's they have a packet of recommended things, and that's one of the things they recommend is DEET. And I didn't even, when I was in Costa Rica, they haven't had a problem with malaria in Costa Rica in so long. I don't even think I put that much even off on me while I was there. I mean, we were by the beach. There was always a really strong breeze. But I just thought that was interesting that's, they're pushing that. I wonder if these doctors make a killing because, Quebecers love to travel to tropical places because it's much of the year is very cold and lots of snow. So that is big business, pushing those vaccines. And I'm not anti-vaccine. I haven't researched it enough, but that just reminded me of the checklist. Oh, if you're going to a tropical place, buy DEET, blah blah blah. They must be getting kickbacks if a doctor's pushing a specific, I think it was a specific brand. Is that the brand name or that's just the chemical name?
No, that's the chemical name. Yeah.
Right. So there are numerous brands, but I think there was a specific brand that they were pushing. And I was just, my attitude was like, okay, better safe than sorry. I got the prescription for that malaria medication because I had a previous girlfriend who was working in Senegal, and she got sick with malaria. And I didn't know much about it. I guess it can come back.
Oh, yeah. I don't know a lot about malaria except that Bill Gates Foundation created the malaria goats and then sent them to Africa to some of the villages where the malaria vaccine was actually in the milk of the goats.
What?
No, literally. And, their website has been changed now, but you used to be able to go through. They had all of their funded projects that they were looking to raise funds on, and then projects that were being worked on. And it literally was a real project to create these genetically modified malaria goats to send over to these poor cities and towns in Africa to help combat malaria.
See,
they're really gone torn now. I mean, you can't even find any of that stuff on their website anymore.
Yeah, I don't know much about it because I would hear that they donated $100 million to some obscure disease or computers in Africa or something like that. To me, I mean, I would start out probably focusing on healthcare in the United States and then homeless and that sort of thing before I went abroad. But and that would be more cost effective. But I don't really have I like that Bill Gates is at least doing something with his money. I don't know enough about his endeavors to pass judgment on it. But
I look into it. I definitely look into it. I used to think Bill Gates was so great being a tech for all those years until I really started to learn now as the back doors to all of our operating systems and applications are wide open for the NSA to probe around, and Billy Gates is donating his money to things such as vaccines and Monsanto food. And he's not looking out for our best interest.
It's funny that reminded me of was it called The Net? There was a movie that Sandra Bullock was in, and one of the years ago, and it was she was like a computer tech or hacker or something, and she discovered this thing, and there was a character kind of like Bill Gates, and where their operating system had this backdoor thing, and it was about to blow. It's called The Net. It's with Sandra Bullock. It's from like the 90s, early 90s, I think. You should check it out. So that was the whole plot, where the billionaire software architect, whatever, like Bill Gates has built this software that everyone around the world uses, but there's this backdoor, and she's trying to stop it or something like that because it's gonna. I don't. You haven't seen that?
I'm sure I did somewhere along the way. I don't quite remember the movie itself. It's been a long time. But speaking of which, guess who just donated $25 million to Ebola?
Oh, Zuckerberg, right?
Yes, you saw that.
Zuckerberg.
Saw that. Gates donated a whole ton of money a couple weeks ago, and now Zuckerbucker has done it. And then I saw that Zuckerbucker and Gates have teamed up with Code.org, I think it's called, now getting into our schools to get all of our kids to learn to code.
I think Zuckerberg's a total douche. I mean,
he's a tool.
He really is. I mean, it just amazes me that...
he just bought 700 acres on one of the Hawaiian Islands, too, I saw.
Oh, my gosh.
Is that his, runaway place once Ebola takes over?
Yeah, I don't know. Who was it that was telling me that he was quoted recently saying, if you're over 30, you're useless, like in the tech business. Like, if you're over 30 and you're useless to Facebook or coming up with new stuff. Just make, statements like that. But I don't really follow him. I've seen with him, he just seems like a real douchebag. And you don't have to be that's the thing. You can be brilliant and rich, and you don't have to be a dickhead. But yeah, he's a billionaire. What is he? He's not even 40, is he?
I don't think so. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't really pay a lot of attention to him.
no, I don't. I don't either. Um, I want to ask you real quickly. When I load up the page, is there a separate page for the chat? Because the chat used to load up automatically when I'd go to ucy.tv, and it wasn't loading up today.
Yeah, page not found. No, I just got there. Somebody said page not found for Mercola's story on the genetically engineered vaccine goats.
Oh, they
Yeah,
took it off.
no, it's there. I got it up, but they couldn't get it up. No, the chat is there. Sometimes chat won't load if your computer's having problems loading Flash.
That's from. Let me see. I might have disabled it. Let's see. I get all the links, and let me see if I try. Because it seems to load on my page when you go to continual condition. I think it loads. Yes, yeah. I don't have it here. It might be Flash on this. I'm running Chrome, but anyway, I have things when you talk about the genetically modified stuff. I'm really torn because I know it's hasn't been the case, and because it ends up being evil corporations, but I really love science. I mean, I'm just amazed at what science is capable of doing and what we can do and what's in the pipeline. And I've always wondered, what sort of things has science engineered as far as affecting, genetically engineered things that's been for the greater good? Would it be possible to create a genetically modified grain of rice that I know they have done it, but that wasn't, that can resist disease, that required less moisture, whatever, that wouldn't be harmful, that would actually be good? Or is this, I just don't believe that all science and tampering is bad in this arena. I'm wondering if it's possible to do some, you know, beneficial modifications. Have you come across, and you know a lot more about this than I do, where there's been some genetically modified things related to, food and that wasn't bad?
Well, I mean, first of all, it's all proprietary genetic modification. So this isn't like it's a public project. These are all multi-billion dollar multi-billion dollar corporations that have their own private labs that aren't undergoing any type of massive oversight because of Michael Taylor's associations and his blanket statement that all GMOs are safe. There isn't some government lab that's making GMOs. It's all these individual corporations that are making GMOs. And to be honest, who the hell knows what they're putting in these things? Okay.
Yeah.
Who knows what they're manipulating? And once they start making these changes, and one of the things I was going to spend some time on here was looking at these new GMO 2.0s that are using the same technology as the secret serum for the RNAi Ebola vaccine that they ran out of. I mean, that literally uses RNA to go in and start turning things off in your DNA. Now, I don't know about you, but there isn't any type of 40 years worth of research on putting in, genetic switches into humans and turning things on and off to see what the long-term result is going to be.
Wouldn't it be great if they focused that technology on cancer and treating the body at a...
Well, no, they already are. They absolutely are. But I'm telling you what, again, let's tell people we have a cure for, I don't know, something like cancer, and see how many line up to get this experimental, it's not even called a vaccine, they're calling it like therapeutics, injected into their bodies. So now your $40 billion a year R&D budget can be wiped off the map, and we can just track people without having to, you know what I mean?
Oh.
And let's have an outbreak first, like, I don't know, Ebola. So we can fast track something that hasn't had any type of safety approval. And that's happened.
Yeah, people forget that the flu kills what? The flu and malaria kill millions a year, and Ebola's killed, what, a couple thousand? Swine flu and avian flu, whatever, they only killed a few thousand, right? And we're going crazy about these things, and with the threat of, oh, it's going to go airborne. Well, guess what? The flu is airborne, and it kills millions of people a year.
Well, that's how this whole project started. It was called the Blue Angel Program, and that was a Department of Defense funded project that started back, trying to remember now, I tracked it back to 2006 when you had all your federal funding from good old Georgie Bush about terror attacks, and it was going to be for the universal flu vaccine. That's exactly what it was about, and it was using genetically modified tobacco to start expressing these antigens. And this is that exact same technology now that they've moved even beyond the universal flu vaccine. And I'm sure that that's probably waiting in the wings somewhere as well. It's the same technology they're using in this RNAi Ebola vaccine, and the same technology that Monsanto is now going to be using in their GMO 2.0 to turn off different substances that cause diseases from insects, let's say. Instead of splicing insecticide into your corn, they're now going to put RNA into your food that will turn off pathogens, let's say, or increase immunity to pathogens in plants. All of this is not tested. Okay, this is not something we want to ingest. This is not something we want to give our kids. This is not something we want to stand in line for because they tell us that it's going to be beneficial. There is no long-term testing on any of this. And up until this point, it has been considered internationally unethical to test this stuff on humans, which is why you have all these multi-billion-dollar pharmaceutical companies with these huge pipelines with all this new technology and all these new drugs that are sitting there waiting to go to human trials because they can't go to human trials. The only way that they can be tested right now is in their decided way in one of the primate species. There's one that's close enough to us that they can test them in there, and that's where it's going to stay. But it will not go to humans unless there is, quote unquote, an emergency. And actually, I dropped that article to myself. It was out of, hold the phone for a second. It was out of, there we go, National Geographic yesterday, that actually talked very much about, not that I trust National Geographic, but they kind of outlined everything that I had been saying. The long quest for Ebola vaccine slowed by science, ethics, and politics. Now, of course, they're crying the blues, saying that funding has been cut for years and we would have had a vaccine had we been funding this. But what they don't tell you is that DARPA has been funding a lot of these commercial pharmaceutical companies on the back end. And I mean, I've tracked probably 10 different pharmaceutical companies now that have received funding over the last 8 to 10 years from the Department of Defense to combat bioterror with these new experimental vaccines. And they are all using this new technology with genetically modified tobacco instead of eggs, which traditionally was the way that they would produce vaccines, because eggs take too long and you're always a season behind, like for the flu, etc.
Right.
Here, just developing vaccines to test in monkeys was a grueling decade-long process that has killed scores of are they macaws?
Macaws, I think.
Max? No, they're the monkey though, not the bird. Max, MACAQUES. Since the 1990s, American researchers almost gave up. No one thought you could protect with a vaccine because Ebola was so aggressive, they said. And it goes on and on.
No, but you know what's crazy is that at all these different levels, and the FDA is just so corrupt. A good example is there was a company called Dendrion, and they created a cancer sort of, basically it teaches your blood to treat to attack prostate cancer. And they developed it so it was one of the few starting to switch to the new paradigm, because chemo kills you. My mother had cancer, and the chemo killed her before the cancer did. And so this does no chemo. It treats your blood, and this is where I think we should be going, obviously. Teaching your immune system to fight, to recognize the cancer. Because cancer is it's the most brilliant, sick, evil thing that nature has created, because it switches the immune system. It spreads, it hides. It's almost like artificial intelligence, like a polymorphic virus, even crazier than that. But so this project actually was very promising. Was eventually approved by the FDA, but it had a lot of other pharma companies running scared. The big ones. This was a very small company, and because it was something like initially a $90,000 treatment, which could prolong your life. And this was just the later stages. They hadn't even been approved for the earlier stages where they probably could have cured it almost. But and that was just everyone went crazy. And even that scumbag Kramer on Mad Money. We have the same last name, but we're not related. He was trying to just say how it was a terrible stock. And so you got the FDA, you've got people like that. And so if this drug, well, not even a drug, this treatment we're promising, and it's getting us away from chemo, Big Pharma just squashed it, and the stock value now is I don't even know. I haven't checked it in so long, but it's worth nothing. And I'm surprised that if this is something that's non-chemo that could prolong someone's life with maintaining their quality of life, what the hell's the problem? The FDA fought it, finally approved it, I don't know if Medicare is if Medicare's paying for it, but this was kind of exciting because I saw what chemo did to someone, one of the closest people to me. And I said, and everyone's had this sort of reaction, like there's got to be another way. This is just terrible. We got to.
Well, chemo's barbaric. Basically, it's just killing all the cells, hoping that you're going to hit what you want to hit. Now, there's many things that they're looking at. Nanotechnology. They want to be able to target, direct the tumors, etc. I say there's a better way. Look at turmeric. Turmeric actually stops the blood vessels from growing that feed the tumors and the cancer cells.
Yeah, you were mentioning that earlier, and I wanted to. That was another. I heard a whole show about that too a couple years ago on Coast to Coast, and it was just amazing. There's, now you can get them, supplements. I eat a lot of Indian food, but I think some of the statistics were because that's a key ingredient in curry, and a lot of, Asian food in India and East Asia. I think the cancer rate is significantly lower.
It sure is, and they live a lot longer. And I'm telling you what, the Indians called it the God spice. You want to eat it with pepper. Pepper hijacks it and makes it 1,000 times more potent. But I have over 1,100 studies that somebody put together in a database. And I mean real studies, not studies out of the United States, though, studies from all kinds of different countries showing actual photographs of Petri dishes after 24 hours of administering turmeric and how the entire cluster of cancer cells shriveled up and died.
Yeah, see, that's what I'd like to take it.
I do it daily. I take it daily. I take it in capsule form and I cook with it like crazy.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to ask you because I haven't. When I ingest it, it's from when I eat Indian food. But are there any supplements that have a good delivery system that are efficient? Because I know there's still. That's the thing. Supplements, people still disagree on that, but. Turmeric, if it has that, the capsule form that you take it, is that proven to be effective? Or
yeah, you want to get it with bioperine, or you get the normal turmeric capsules, and then you take it with a peppercorn.
You take the peppercorn with it yourself, or does it come ground down in the capsule?
The bioperine is ground down peppercorn, and that's in the capsule,
okay.
But it's way more expensive. You could just get standard turmeric. You could even get yourself bulk organic turmeric, and then buy yourself some of those vegetarian capsules and make it yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I've got two little bottles here of turmeric that I cook with, and I put cumin and is it turmeric or turmeric? I pronounce it. I say cumin and turmeric.
That's what I used to say, but it's not spelled that way. It's TUR, turmeric.
Turmeric, right? Turmeric, yeah.
Yeah, I use cumin as well. I usually put it in with the turmeric.
I put that on my eggs, and I learned that in Morocco.
I bet that's good. Put it also
so
in your
good.
chili.
Yeah,
put it in
salt.
your soups. Put it in everything. It's delicious.
Well, what about cumin? Does that have any cancer-fighting properties to it?
Nothing that I've researched. I just like the flavor of it. But you do want to take a look at ginger. Ginger's another big one, anti-inflammatory, as well as, and I put that in my tea. I grind up fresh ginger and put it in my tea.
What is Kevin Blanche? Does he have any?
No, he went for the chemo. He went for the chemo route, and now he does all liquid.
That's what I mean. I know he did chemo, but now is he saying? Because I know he's has a crusade against radiation in Fukushima, but didn't he? I can't remember when he came on my show if he talked about supplements that he thought had
No, he
experienced.
does not have any natural remedies that he believes in.
Really, I'm surprised.
No, he does his running, I think, or his hiking now, and he does all raw food like smoothies and stuff. But
Yeah, bananas and stuff. I think I remember he was great on my show because I you know seen a lot of his videos and so I wasn't sure what he was going to be like on my show, but he was great. I wasn't sure if he was going to go off and get really angry at Fukushima and stuff. But
no,
we
I've had him on as a guest a few times. He's great.
Yeah, no, he's great. So, well, I was hoping to meet up with him because he comes. I think his daughter, his son, he has a
Daughters
kid.
in New York, yeah.
Yeah, she's in New York. So, and he was here. I tried to meet up with him. I think it was last summer. I sent him a message, but he's probably too busy because I think he was doing a demonstration or something. But well, listen, I gotta leave you on that. I gotta get back to work, but I had a little free time and I wanted to call in and
Awesome.
check in. So, great show tonight. Continual condition, 8 to 9.
Yes, your new night.
That's right. It's great. So we have the professor of cinema and filmmaking back on tonight. So we're talking about the horror genre. And then hopefully next week I'm trying to book a New York psychic who does seances. She's been on the show before. She's great. So I'm trying to get her to come on and sort of dispel the what paranormal is and Ouija boards, because a lot of psychics, it's very fascinating what they do. Some don't believe in demons, some do. Trying to get her on. And then I might have Lyle Blackburn on for the 29th. He's the author of The Beast of Boggy Creek, and then the new book out called The Lizard Man. So this would be a great, Halloween type theme for
That'd be
this
awesome.
month. And these are all great authors too. They've all published, and they're very articulate. And Kyle's great. He's all tattooed up, and he looks like a biker. And then he gets out. You read his writing, and it's superb. And he's very articulate. By seeing his pictures, you think he was like a bouncer at a bar in down south or something. But so tune in tonight, guys. Jules, have a great day. I'm going to try to listen on a bit more, and I will talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks, Jonathan. Thanks
Have a
for
great
calling.
day.
All right. We'll be listening tonight. All right. That was Jonathan Kramer from The Continued Condition. Yes, tonight, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific here on UCY. It sounds like it'll be a great show. Okay. So I want to get back now. I don't know if you guys were able to open this or not. I'm the one that usually has the freaky not able to open a link issue, but I saw someone in chat say they couldn't find it. This is on Mercola's website, articles.mercola.com from 2012. But yes, it did happen. Genetically engineered goats that produce new vaccine in their milk, the worst of both worlds. Goats are being genetically engineered to become quote-unquote farm with a pH animals that carry vaccines in their milk. Now, this says that the research was done at Texas A&M, which does not surprise me since they were the ones that started working on the genetically modified tobacco with DARPA to make the vaccines as well. I had read the original story about these genetically engineered goats on the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation website under their current news, which of course is no longer there. They don't tell you about any of the projects they're funding or working on. But it didn't say where they were doing the research, so maybe they funded it. So this is in 2012. Current experiments being conducted by researchers from Texas A&M are geared toward producing an edible malaria vaccine with the ultimate goal being that children drinking the milk will become vaccinated in the process. How horrifying is that? While claiming that bioengineered animals could be lifesavers for people in third world countries, the researchers ignore the glaring issue that such biotechnology often produces unknown, and yes, any of this stuff, if you start reading into any of this stuff, including the RNAi technology, that is the biggest concern. Though maybe something shows in the lab that it's good, long-term effects are unknown. So you want to line your kids up to be number one in line for that? I know I don't. The unknown and unintended health consequences that prove tragic for individuals and the environment. Transmogrifying farm animals into farm animals with a pH to act as living and breathing pharmaceutical factories is not new. In 2009, the Food and Drug Administration approved the first drug produced by livestock that had been bioengineered to express a human gene. I wonder if this was the cows. There were cows that they were bioengineering, slipping in human genes so they would produce human milk. By the way, it's kind of gross. So people would drink human milk because it's just so good for your immune system. Yeah, but I don't know whether or not human milk geoengineered from a cow is good. In this case, the protein was extracted from milk of genetically engineered goats. And in the latest instance, researchers introduced DNA coding for the malaria parasite into the goat genome linked to milk production. The DNA is supposed to switch on only in the mammary gland when the goat produces milk. And as we've seen in the past with genetically modified plants, genetically engineered vaccine-producing animals might enter the food supply unexpectedly, exposing unintended recipients to the vaccine. Or the animals might escape and breed with others, passing these bioengineered genes on with unpredictable consequences. Even the technology itself is risky at best, because when animals are exposed to foreign DNA, literally anything can happen. Oh, RGBH comes into the picture. Take, for instance, milk from cows treated with a synthetic genetically engineered growth hormone called RBGH. We talked about this at the beginning of the show, also called RBGT. RBGH milk differs from natural milk nutritionally, pharmacologically, immunologically, and hormonally, along with causing health problems in cows, and is linked to cancer in humans. What does ingesting the DNA from malaria parasites in your milk cause? No one quite knows. Malaria is caused by a parasite of the species Plasmodium, which is spread from person to person by infected mosquitoes. Every year it results in about 1 million deaths, the majority of which are in third world countries. We are certainly in need of a solution. Now, they also, and I remember Gates being a part of this as well, they now have these genetically modified mosquitoes that they released in Australia that were laden with malaria vaccine, and they would also eat the larvae of the malaria mosquitoes. And now they have released mosquitoes, I believe, in Brazil, and this was just a week or so ago. There was a video on Pigmine's website, pigminenews.com, about dengue fever, which we saw an outbreak in Japan about a month ago. First time since 1945 it reared its ugly head. And, of course, they're blaming it on climate change, just as Japan had their feet put to the fire to sign a climate change document to join in the fight, mysteriously. So they ended up with dengue fever and in Brazil, they released these genetically modified mosquitoes to protect against dengue fever now. Okay, so back to the genetically modified malaria goats. However, emerging vaccine markets, like in third world countries, will soon outgrow developed markets by hundreds of billions of dollars. And don't think that this is being done for the good of humanity, people. Hundreds of billions of dollars in profits make all of those evil bastards turn green and rub their hands together while salivating with the thought of hundreds of billions of dollars in profits. And they can do anything. If, we haven't gotten onto any of this DARPA technology in a while, or any of the mind control stuff that, lo and behold, was being done with mRNA technology, again, manipulating our DNA to be able to insert and remove memories. Don't think that is not related to the vaccinations that they're developing now in the GMO food. Okay. I think that there's going to be some very nefarious stuff that is coming up that's going to be given to us with the promise of a cure to some of the worst diseases that we've seen in the last couple generations. But remember, these diseases did not necessarily exist in the volumes that they do today. So was it problem, reaction, solution? As we've seen so many times, that seems to be one of their favorite ways to get us to fall for the carrot every time, right? Make us feel afraid, make us feel that we need to be protected, and then give us the solution and get us to line up for it. Anyway, so check this out. However, emerging vaccine markets like third world countries will soon outgrow developed markets by hundreds of billions of dollars. Emerging markets are areas of the world that are beginning to show promise as a profitable venture for many products, including vaccines, are primarily developing countries in the Southeast and Central Asia and Africa, and have been on the vaccines market radar for quite some time. Oh, Ebola. Oh, bird flu. Yes, yes, yes. If you wanted my personal opinion, it is yes. One reason that vaccine makers are interested in these parts of the world is that this is where most of the deaths from major infectious diseases occur. Maybe. Are they naturally occurring? Who knows? But one of the things that I also wanted to mention is be aware, be very aware of what is going on in South America. They did not mention that here, but I believe that South America, especially with, climate change, because it's so nice and warm there, is probably going to be a new hotspot for us to start testing things. And don't forget, we read a story from about a week ago about the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation being finally sued by a group of people in India. It has gone to their Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court has agreed to hear the case about, I believe it was in two towns. One was over 14,000 girls. The other was over 16,000 girls who were injected with the HPV vaccine when it was in the testing phase without proper consent. And I've talked about what I discovered in my research about the HPV vaccine that is now being recommended for all of our children, girls and boys, in the United States. And there are even some states, including New York, that currently right now have that on the docket to be made mandatory. Now that happens, I'm out of here. I'm out of New York. My child will not be forced to have an experimental vaccine. And if you look into the HPV vaccine, what you're going to find out is the HPV vaccine includes next generation virus-like particles that are loaded with nanotechnology. Now, they are injecting our children from 8 to 13, I believe, is the age group that they are going after to supposedly prevent. And there's a long list of all these cancers. HPV, from what I've read, causes venereal warts, which then can cause future cancers. But on the other hand, growing up in all these years, how many people in your lifetime did you know that had venereal warts? Not that you would know, but, you always knew when somebody had something. I could tell you one person that I knew, one friend of mine long, long ago that discovered that she had been infected. One. Out of all the people I've known all my life. So is that worth lining up for some experimental vaccine? I would say not. Anyway, and then we have over in Pakistan doing all of these polio vaccines and all these kids dying from it. I mean, to me, this is just absolute mayhem. And now, wait, I'm going to take a look. What is this? It is like an eye chart. Are these all the people involved in vaccines in Monsanto? I believe so. And then in our federal government, I haven't quite seen this one, but it's an eye chart. I'm going to drop this into chat that was on that same document that had the genetically modified goats on it. Maybe it'll load, maybe not. It was just a JPEG. I don't know. My stuff's all acting kind of messed up too. So, all right, I'm going to jump off of these genetically engineered goats now. For anyone who wants to see it, it's at articles.mercola.com, or you can just search malaria goats. It was for real. Absolutely. I know people think it sounds like a crazy proposition, but they absolutely did this. And that was a story from 2012. So in case you missed it, but I want to get back really quick to anti-GMO labeling. So there are some companies that have decided to put non-GMO labels on their food without being made to do so. And I applaud every single one of them. But here's the problem. Can you trust those labels? And I mean, I got to tell you, I tend to be trusting until I'm screwed over. And there was one kind of corn chip. Now, I have stopped all corn in my family for the last 2 or 3 years ever since I learned about BT corn. And we got involved in that Prop 37 in California. Madison Rupert, when he was doing a show, we actually had the founder of the Prop 37 GMO labeling movement on as a guest. The woman was great. And I learned a lot about BT corn and GMOs back in those days. The March Against Monsanto, Global March, Nick Burnaby, he was one of the founders of that. He's also on this network on UCY. So make sure you listen to them. They still do that March Against Monsanto yearly. I really got to free up some time because we have a website that we're working on for that we're going to try and launch some whoop ass on that GMO movement as well as some other movements. But anyway, this really bothered me that I saw this, and I really hope that there's a class action lawsuit against this company because there is one kind of corn chip. Now, I love tacos. I love any type of Mexican food. I do make it with my turmeric and cumin and chili powder. Absolutely delicious. And we make homemade salsa. Actually, this whole summer's been great because I had an entire greenhouse full of tomatoes and hot peppers, so it was delicious. But I could never do corn chips with it or corn taco shells either because 90%, I believe, of all the U.S. corn is genetically modified. Well, there was this brand called Xochitl, I think. It's Xochitl. I'm sure you've seen it. It's usually on the very bottom shelf in the snack section. They have them in a couple different flavors. They're made with sea salt, no trans fat, no gluten, organic and non-GMO. I mean, how much better can you get? They're in a paper bag, not plastic. I was just like so freaking excited that we could have corn chips again, especially when we had tacos. Well, check this out because I was so pissed off when I read the story. This is from the 13th, 2 days ago. Popular national tortilla company busted by Consumer Reports for false no GMO labels. The trend towards sourcing non-GMO ingredients has been a promising one for the American consumer and for American companies. Think about it. Who put that label on there for the growing number of people who are realizing how dangerous GMO foods are to our bodies, ending up with all these freaky illnesses that can't be explained. But the rising demand for non-GMO products also brings with it potential for mistakes or even outright fraud. Oh, really? Fraud in corporate America? I would never have believed it. That was sarcasm. While more and more companies and favorite food products are going non-GMO, they still have to wrestle with the fact that America is by far, and we are, BASF was kicked out of Germany for their GMO portion of their company, not for their coating that they used to put on cassette tapes. And they moved their headquarters to Research Triangle Park, North Carolina, with all the other big GMO giants, including Monsanto and Syngenta. Because we were, quote unquote, according to their press release, more GMO friendly. If you've ever seen the map of all the countries around the globe that ban GMO foods and that we don't, I saw a meme the other day that was great that showed that very map, and it said all of these countries believe the food we eat in this country is poison. I was like, wow, you're absolutely right on that. All right, so while more and more companies and favorite food products are going non-GMO, they still have to wrestle with the fact that America is by far the biggest GMO country that produces GMOs with over 90% of its soy. So if you think soy milk's healthy, got another thing coming. Also, almond milk? Nope. Almonds are grown in California that is getting nuked by Fukushima radiation. BGH milk? Nope. Stay away from that if you can. Try and get BGH free. And remember, my EPA report still showed from 1999 through 2011, they have been detecting radiation in the milk on and off all around the country. Over 90% of its soy is currently genetically modified, as well as almost 90% of all the U.S. grown corn. One of the most effective things food companies can do to increase their sales is take any reservations that its customers may have about their products, whether or not they are GMO ingredients, and label them for the consumers. The tortilla chip company Zotil has gained a foothold in grocery stores across the United States in large part because of two words added to its package to reassure its customers: no GMO. And yes, it is the only reason I have purchased their products. Its website shows that the chips are now in grocery stores across the country, and they have both organic and non-organic varieties that both say no GMO on the bag. But according to a recent test conducted by Consumer Reports that actually found its way to the mainstream media, and we're going to play that in a minute, the company has been lying about that important distinction of being non-GMO. Despite the non-GMO claims by Xochitl, pronounced Xochitl, and their Totopus de Magro original corn chips, or Totopus de Maize, original corn chips, the recent Consumer Report investigation found that the non-organic, supposedly non-GMO varieties of the chip actually contain 75% GMO corn over a test of 6 different packages of their product. Corn of the GMO variety we found in each type of the chips, despite the no GMO and all natural labels on the front of the packages. According to the article from Food Babe, the Consumer Reports report did find that USDA organic and non-GMO project verified labels are trustworthy when it comes to avoiding GMO, but the Xochitl finding raises the question of whether or not we can even trust unverified claims. Also, according to the Consumer Reports report, which can be read in its entirety here, and I will drop that into chat in a second, the majority of samples from companies that make unregulated non-GMO claims contain about 0.9% GMO corn or soy on an average. So, whoops. Unlike kosher, which you need to have 2 separate facilities to produce. I don't know if anyone knew that, but you do. For I had a lot of Jewish friends in college. I went to a state university in New York. Long Island being a part of New York, there's good tuition. So a lot of the Jewish from Long Island actually came to Buffalo to go to school. And in the kosher world, you had to have 2 separate kitchens, 2 separate full means of preparation. Just like for peanut allergies, you see sometimes at a coffee place that has donuts that'll say a little note that says, things prepared in this facility have been prepared on the same facilities as, peanuts have been. So know that this is not a non-allergy free location. Well, obviously for GMO, since there is no labeling, no laws, and Michael Taylor, we could read all that again. He has been in and out the back door of our federal government and Monsanto for many, many, many years, and he was the man that put the stamp on GMO saying, regardless, GMOs are safe. We don't need to test each one individually. You could just put it into the food chain. Remember, too, that also covers your nanotech, because that's part of your genetic modification. So even if it says it's non-GMO, if it hasn't been verified, they have not been required to prepare it in a facility that hasn't also prepared GMO foods. So you will still probably get trace amounts, is what that's saying. So while such claims may give you a better chance of avoiding GMO, it is important to remember that they are not regulated in any way and to choose products with the aforementioned labels that are verified whenever possible. It is also important to note that all natural, quote unquote, products had comparable levels of GMO corn and soy to their conventional counterparts, according to Consumer Reports. In other words, the label is virtually meaningless if you want to avoid GMO. So just because it says all natural does not mean it doesn't have GMO. And we talked about that one morning. Also, I discovered a long time ago when we were working on that Prop 37 California labeling to get that out there, just because it says just because it says organic does not mean it does not contain GMOs, because GMOs can still be grown organically. Of course, if you're looking for a non-GMO corn chip and these results about this Xochitl are indeed correct, the no GMO claim that Xochitl's non-organic corn chips should be considered meaningless as well. Adjust your grocery store shopping habits accordingly, and feel free to let Xochitl know how you feel about this on their Facebook page. Yeah, and I thought somewhere in here originally it called for everyone getting together and having a class action lawsuit, which I most certainly would join to at least get the money back that I spent buying their corn chips thinking that they were non-GMO. I mean, call me cheap, but that pisses me off. It's like, again, being cheated on by someone you trusted, like the Obama deception, right? I'm voting for that asshole thinking that things are going to change and finding out that you just voted for the biggest fraud ever, okay? It pisses me off. That's what motivated me to even do a show, guys. Here, I'm going to pull myself back in now. So hold on. Because I want to play this video. We got a few minutes left, about 5. Maybe we can. This is the Consumer Reports video about these corn chips. This literally, it says no GMO, all natural, organically grown on the one that I buy, and whoops, no, it wasn't. All right, maybe this will play. Let's hope so. After a commercial, maybe. I don't know what this is. Come on. And they don't even tell you how long it's going to be. 15 seconds. Here we go. All right, 14, 15. Bink.
Morning rounds, new findings about genetically modified foods. They're made from organisms by altering DNA. GMO labeling isn't required in the U.S., despite worries about the potential health risk. A Consumer Reports study out this morning shows the surprising result of testing on cereals, chips, baby formulas, and more. Rashi Rangan is the magazine's Director of Consumer Safety and Sustainability. Good morning.
Good morning.
So what did your survey find?
Well, we looked at about more than 80 processed foods that contain corn and soy out there. We did about 2 samples of each. It's really a snapshot study, not drawing conclusions about any. But here's what we found out. If a product didn't have a claim on it, it was likely to contain GMO corn and soy. And then we looked at a number of other labels that suggested GMOs were not used and sort of put those to the test as well.
So why are GMOs bad for you?
Yes. There's a lot of controversy about GMOs. Unfortunately, they're not required to be proven to be safe before they get out on the market.
There you go.
Learning that in a backwards direction. There are some concerning animal studies, not enough done in humans. But until then, we know more than 90% of people want to know if GMOs are in their food. And so we think they have a right to know that.
And what do we do with that?
Just know, too, the concerning animal studies, look up Dr. Huber. Dr. Huber and GMO, so we can tell you about the cows.
Information. So you tell us it has GMOs, and you want us to do what with that information?
Well, I think just like if a food is homogenized or made from concentrate or irradiated, those labels are required to be on food. Mm-hmm. So just like GMOs, we think it follows logic that they should be labeled as well.
And even if it says natural, that still doesn't mean that it doesn't have GMOs in it?
Unfortunately, there's not a lot of definition behind natural. 64% of people in our survey believe that natural means no GMO. Right. And yet that's not the case. There is very little definition for what natural has to mean. And that's just one of the reasons we've been actually having a campaign to ask consumers and the government to ban the natural label.
But I still don't understand, why can't we find out whether they're good for you or bad for you?
Well, there's not a whole lot of testing that's out there, Charlie. There's not a lot of safety testing required. The government here doesn't mandate that. They do not require that before these things go to market that they're actually proven to be safe.
But they've been on the market for a long time, haven't they?
They've been on the market for probably the last decade, and they're certainly different enough to get a patent for. And if they're different enough to get a patent for, why aren't they different enough to demonstrate that they're safe?
Okay, if natural doesn't reveal it, what if it says organic?
So So natural in the products we tested, almost all that only natural labeled had GMOs. When it came to other claims that were reliable, organic was very, very good. It's a certification program. It legally prohibits the use of GMOs, and that was reliable.
So as someone who does a lot of the grocery shopping, my husband's laughing out loud right now. Why shouldn't I buy foods that have GMOs? They're going to do some GMOs and it's going to do...
We need to look at that about the organic legally prohibiting GMO usage in there, because that is not what I read, but I will verify her claims there.
Something to my children or to me?
I think it's really about making informed choices and having people decide for themselves. Labeling is required in more than 60 countries by the same companies who fight labeling in this country. And the fact of the matter is, it hasn't destroyed GMO production in any other country. People have a right to know whether it's in their foods. They want to know. If people wanted all blue M&Ms, they'd be labeling for blue M&Ms. So just like that, we think people have a right to know if foods are produced with GMOs. And if they're concerned about it, they need to have ways, and there are ways for them to actually avoid that.
All right. And your number is so people can call you. There's more to discuss. Thank you, Yarashi Raymond.
Thank you.
Always good to have you
And
here.
thank God we're going to have colored M&Ms.
That's right.
All right, so there you go, guys. I mean, that was Consumer Reports talking about the dangers of GMOs, and there is no testing that is required. I mean, can you honestly believe that? And it is Michael Taylor who is responsible for that. I mean, we started the show out looking at that, looking at all these autoimmune diseases and autistic disorders that have spread across the people of our country. I am telling you, people, they are all related. We don't know what the stuff is doing to our body. Oh, if we put Obamacare into the mix, they'll be able to track all of those illnesses in us and report on them. And like I've said, getting rid of a $50 million R&D budget every year and just being able to track what all of your patients eat and then which corresponding diseases they get will be a great way to save money in all of these public corporations. One very last thing here. We're going to close it out with this in the last 50 seconds. My friend sent this to me. It is a picture of a heavy-duty cleaner in a box called TSP, which is trisodium phosphate clean surfaces in preparation for painting. It is the original deck and siding cleaner, and it effectively controls lead paint dust, and it is also an ingredient on the side of a box of Lucky Charms. So throw away those Lucky Charms with all that red dye. Number 5. All right, guys, we are at the end of the show. Stick around. We will continue this discussion tomorrow. Today is Wednesday. Continual Condition is up tonight live. We also have Josh with Anti-Tyranny News, and we have the Anti-Media Radio, as well as the Girls Truth or Talk Radio with April and Burstein, talking about secret societies with old Grand Am tonight at 9 p.m. All right, everybody have an awesome day. Dig into it. Tomorrow, call in with some